In this video, I'm going to show you how to format your headings and the table of contents for your thesis or dissertation. Now, the first thing that's important to note is that the method I'm going to show you will only work if you use our template. So you need to go to our thesis and dissertation website, scroll down, find the thesis template, the Word version, and then you need to build your document into the template. So you save it under your own file name and then replace the existing template text with your own text. And our goal then is to arrive at a situation where we can update the table of contents quickly, and it'll pick up all of your headings, it'll pick up the page numbers, and it'll format it neatly without you having to do any further work. And so you notice if I'm at the table of contents within the template, if you click anywhere on the table of contents, it becomes shaded, which means it's a field which can be updated. And so if you right click, you can then update field. And we'll come back to this in a moment. I'll show you how it works, but that's what we're really building towards. All right, so if we go to the first chapter, for the time being, I'm just going to move this down, but of course, as you were building your own text, you would highlight and delete this section. But let's say you're starting chapter 1. The first thing I would mention is that it's a good idea to just leave the chapter headings as they are. You can, of course, add new ones later if you need more than 5 chapters. But it's a good idea to use the existing 5 chapters as a starting point because they're already built correctly. And even if you have to change the second line, the name of the chapter, you can do that without any damage to the format. But let's just pretend we want to go ahead and add some chapter sections. Let's say I'm going to number them sequentially, and I'm going to number them manually. Now when I go ahead and push enter here, sometimes Microsoft Word will assume that you're doing an automatic numbering system. It's okay if it does that, but I'm trying to do it manually, so that's what I'm talking about, the automatic system. I'm going to push Control-Z to undo that because I want to be able to number my sections manually as we go. So let's pretend, for starters, that we have these 3 sections. We want to add 1.1, 1.2, and 1.2.1. Now the first thing you can do is look through the template and look at the examples of the format for these. And you can see that all of our level 2 headings have this appearance. All of our level 3 headings have this appearance. Level 4 and level 5. And so I'm going to show you how to do it in this exact same way. When I say level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm talking about the number of digits that go before the section heading if you're using numbering. So in other words, if I say level 2 heading, the simple way to remember that is it's a heading that would have 2 numbers in the numbering. A level 3 heading would have 3 numbers. And of course, level 3 headings are under level 2 headings. So in other words, 1.2.1 is one subsection under 1.2. And so as you're making your subsections and numbering them, you want to kind of be logical in the way that you're organizing them. Now, the simple question is this: how do we get Microsoft Word to identify these headings as headings? The answer is quite simple. On the Home tab, you'll find these styles listed on the upper right. The styles essentially tell Microsoft Word what type of text you're working with. And so if I click on the existing headings, let's say the chapter heading, you'll see it automatically is associated with heading 1, style. That tells Microsoft Word that it's a heading and it's a level 1 chapter heading. Similarly, our existing headings would be associated with the appropriate level. Level 2 headings would be heading 2, level 3 headings, heading 3, and so on. And so if you have your own heading and you want to transform it into a heading that Microsoft Word can identify, you simply highlight the text, the heading only, and then click the style of the heading you want it to be. So if you click heading 2, it actually will bold it for you as we would like. And then if you click on it, it's now identified as heading 2. Same thing would apply for this level 2 heading. And the level 3 heading is a little bit more complicated. So as we saw in the sample, for APA style level 3 headings, you want them to be indented, bold, and you also want the main paragraph text to begin on the same line as the heading. And so the best way to do this is to simply start your paragraph, and then you highlight just the heading. And so it's good to have the period between the heading and the chapter paragraph text, rather. You highlight only the heading up to the period, not including the period, and then you click heading 3. And you'll see it makes it bold, and now you'll want to indent it to make sure that it's identified properly or formatted properly in appearance. One other subtlety that comes up is that you want to be consistent in your use of case capitalization. And so, for instance, level 2 headings, like the chapter headings and like your title on the title page, should use title case capitalization. And so that would look like this. You'd capitalize the first letter of all of the major words, not the minor linking words of the, and, a, but all the major words within the heading or the subsection. For level 3 and up subheadings, you are not required to do that. So for instance, you can use sentence case capitalization, which is to say the same style you'd use for any sentence within a paragraph. You'd only capitalize the first letter of the first word, or you'd capitalize any proper nouns that appear within the heading. But again, the main point is that you need to be consistent across the section type. So all level 2 headings should have title case capitalization, and all level 3 headings should have the same type of capitalization. So they could be title case, but they'd all have to be title case, or they should all be sentence case, as we have in our examples. Okay, so now having done this, you've now identified which heading type these 3 headings belong to. If you go back up to the table of contents, you can now click, and then you can either right-click and choose Update Field, and it'll ask you if you want to update the page numbers or the entire table. For our purposes, we want to update the entire table so that it identifies these new sections we've added. And you can see the 3 sections we've added now appear, 1.1, 1.2, and 1.2.1. And you'll notice that it indents each section type appropriately, so you don't have to do any further work there. All level 2 headings are indented evenly. All level 3 headings will be indented evenly if you use this method. One other point I wanted to make is that there's a shortcut you can use for updating the table of contents. So if you click on the table of contents to kind of pull it up, you can then press F9. F9 is also a shortcut to update the field. Now, one subtlety, you'll notice that this extra chapter number popped up when we updated the field. That's because of a built-in feature of the template that's actually beneficial. But the simple answer is you don't really need this extra number at the beginning. So you can manually backspace, delete it, and the point is you'll do that right before you create the final PDF. So in other words, the PDF will not have that extra 1 that pops out there. So that's one final thing you need to do when you're finishing your document after you've updated it. But notice that every time you update the entire table, that will pop back up. So again, that's something you do at the end before you're finalizing your document into PDF form. Now, one other thing I want to show you is a problem that sometimes comes up. Let's say you were adding another level 3 subsection. And again, I'm going to use this capitalization style. One thing you wouldn't want to do is I accidentally identify more of the paragraph as part of the heading. Because now, even if you change this back to non-bold font so it looks correct, if you go back up to the table of contents and update it, and then here I'm going to use F9 as the shortcut, you'll see that it picked up too much of that text, and so part of the paragraph is actually contained in the table of contents. Now, you could manually delete it if you wanted to do it that way. Each time that pops up, you could just delete it. That would be fine. But the better answer is to go to the section within the text, and you can push Control and then click to jump right to it. And now you can unidentify this with the heading. And so you'll want to identify this as normal instead. But as you can see, it sometimes has a hard time with this. So usually the best way is to normalize the whole thing. You can then bring this back on the same line and now carefully identify only the heading as heading level 3 or level 4 or level 5, as the case may be. But that's one thing to note. If anything pops up in your table of contents that's not desired, it must mean that something is identified as one of these heading types. Now, one other subtlety I'll share with you is if you go to the View tab, you can click on Navigation Pane. And the benefit of this is it shows you all the sections that are properly identified within the text. And so it shows the chapter headings, it shows at least the level 2 headings. Sometimes it'll show more, depending on how you do that. And this allows you to quickly jump through the text. So once you start to build your own accurate table of contents, you can then quickly jump from, say, section, the beginning of chapter 1 to chapter 4, just using this side tab. And so it allows you to kind of quickly go back and forth and find problem areas or find areas that you need to revise or edit. It helps you kind of keep track of where you are in your document. That answers most of the common questions and problems revolving around the section headings. One final point I'll share for those who need to build more chapter headings is that you could also copy and paste some of the existing headings we have. And so indeed, you could actually go into the existing template. Here's a sample text. You could copy this heading. You can make 4 copies of it. And each of them, you could simply use your own numbering and your own, replace the text with your own text. And then they would also pop up correctly in the table of contents if you updated it. So if you prefer that method, you could also do that. And the point I wanted to make is that you could certainly do that for a chapter heading. So let's say you have 6 chapters. Let's jump to chapter 5. Let's say you want to add a 6th chapter. You could highlight the chapter 5 heading. Now you can push down the references, and we're going to start chapter 6 on this page. You can simply change the chapter number and change the description. And now, again, when you go back up to the table of contents, you can update field, update entire table, and you'll see it also has added our new chapter, chapter 6.